So my target now is to remove the bullet points. Yes, I need to remove it. And I'll also put some 3 or 4 pages. I really don't want 6 pages. Maybe I'll add uh, about us, contact, feedback, some other name. We just rename it. We'll create some 4 or 5 pages. Maybe the first one I want to make it as a registration, because next thing I want to make it as a registration form. Logo, I have no idea. I hope you have added. Oh, let me remove the bullet points. I hope this is the last design. List style type set to none, I hope. Am I right? Few of the design changes I would like to do here. One is this particular default margin which it puts. I really don't like. I need to remove that. Before that, I would like to re-clarify one more time. As you know already, these blocks are boxes. Sometimes we may call it as a block, because as for HTML standard, it is called block. In fact, a box or block, typically a width and height what you suggest it's going to take. Fine. Margin was the outer side or outer space what we give, and inner space what we call padding. In fact, we also have a border. So border, if you are giving, which is border is going to be between the margin and of course margin, border, and of course the padding is going to come. Anything you, any specified value you give, remember it will complement the size. It will either increase the width or the calculative width or total effective width. It will complement those values. So we have already tested them. I hope you remember. I tried to increase. I tried to add a padding left or right and try to see like how it disturbed our design. So remember in such a way, these kind of designs are going to, I mean, this kind of a padding, margin, borders, everything going to complement the either width or height. Depending on that, you have to adjust your block sizes and keep your design intact. And the float, remember this float made sure it only occupies the specified width and height, leave the space free for other object to sit. In fact, this made sure this particular image was used and this image occupies this particular block and leaves the space free for other divs or other boxes to come. So it is recommended because the default expectation of for a box design should be having a float value. That's the reason I forced to keep the float. Otherwise, any block will tend to occupy the entire row. You may not be getting a free space occupying to the rest of the boxes to sit. So that's the design standard. Let me see if I can remove the margin. So it's unordered list, left navigation bar, inside we have a unordered list. So margin, let me see if I can give a negative value, because it's already complementing some value, I hope, by default. Pretty good, fine. Next. Okay. Few more thing, as a hyperlink, if you notice that the link symbol comes only when I move over the link, but the expected behavior, even though if I move my cursor over here, I want to see the link enabled. So we have to make sure the link spread across the entire the block of the list item. So that small change we have to do, which may be due to the reason the standard hyperlink element or tag by default is not a block, it's not a box. Like a div, it is a box, but it is not a box by default. So anything you encounter which is not by default a block, you may make it as a display block. So it will be a block element. Now if you notice, see, any place I move the cursor, I don't need to hover on the top of this particular link. I can very well click on the entire link. So Depending on your requirement, you may either choose whatever way. And one more thing, I would like to give a idea about the child element. For example, I can even specify in this way: list the child of the links is going to be an hyperlink. So this particular declaration is only applicable followed by a list item. So this also I can make. It's not going to make any difference, but I'll do one thing. Maybe I'll put one more hyperlink to show you first, then we can think about adding. Let me put one hyperlink over here. Remember, see, if I have made it as a block, it has occupied the entire row. If you notice that, that entire link is, I could detect it throughout the row. Okay, and it doesn't have an underline. We could very clearly notice that because we have already disabled text decoration set to none, so that it doesn't put an underline. So it is same, like it is same behavior as if it is inside the list item. But sometime I want to have a different background color or different behavior of this link. I only want to have a specific style or selector added only to the child of the list item, not the other hyperlinks. In that case, I can force it to make in this way. So this particular design or this particular selection is only applicable to the child of the list item. So in this case, the child of the list item, of course, the hyperlink. But whereas this one is not. So we should see some sort of different behavior. Okay, this is fine. Remember, if you notice that this is a normal, very default hyperlink with the underline, and it is not a block. I don't see that the hyperlink block or anything. So if you really want to have some sort of arrangement where that particular element only work, or only that design specification should be adopted only when it is a child of something, you may do in this way. It can also be in that way. For example, let me create one more declaration. List item A. When the cursor hover on that particular element, or in this case the child of list item, a hyperlink, when a mouse or any cursor going to hover on that thing, this particular style sheet should take effect. We'll change that color, I hope. Put a different color. Only way we have a now. Okay, this is still not looking good. Well, we'll fix it. But anyway, I could notice the color change happens as I hover on the top of the hyperlink. Okay, it is due to the margin padding. Something looks like we can very well identify it. Okay, we'll do one thing. This margin padding is really disturbing us. We remove the inner space because the lists tend to add some inner space to the hyperlink. I'll move this here. Now we see the complete color change. So it tells, okay, there is a link exists. Remember, nothing has happened to this because this is entirely a different hyperlink, even though. And we have one more event. Remember, it's a built-in event. I don't even manually call something to do it. As that thing happens, this event change is happening. One more thing, I hope it is, even though we could not see it clearly, but I can view it's active, assuming the user has clicked it. So we'll put a different background color. Some kid blue whatever. I can't see it. Maybe once I click it, The moment I click, I hope you saw small transition happened. It's just active stage as the hyperlink is being clicked. We'll do it actually. In fact, uh, by default this is a home page. We'll consume it. By default it has to be selected, and as subsequent selection happens, let the user go to the subsequent different pages. So let me rename the links. Okay, 5 links more than enough. I'll just give a relevant naming. Okay. The first page being indexed, so just let it be. Okay. There is already a slightly a difference, but anyway, I want to make sure the selected stage highlighted in a different color. It is actually a, I think links are correct. We had to create those pages, but just like to verify them. So the current page being indexed, we could already see a small difference over here because it is a visited page for that purpose. But this is not the transition I really want. I want to get it highlighted because once I click, there is a small color change or something happened. I want to retain that. What we can do, we can add one more style definition. Is there same blue has been used anywhere? No, right? Let me create a child element under the list item. In this case, it is going to be a class selector. In this way also we can create. Remember, list item being a tag selector, but it has a child selector as a something like a class. It expects a class. So this particular class should be added to the child of the list item. But before that, let me put the same. So this is the active one. Child of this list item is a hyperlink. So let me add it as, okay. Now if you notice, the selected item remains because we have added active tag for the list item child. Now it is showing as if it is selected. So I am residing in the home page. So I need to create subsequent pages with the same design or different design. Need to take the user to a different screens, but having the different selection highlighted. So let's create the 5 different pages first. Just I'm going to copy paste it to start with. Maybe we'll add an exclusive design later point of time, because we have to encounter one issue: modularity. The code may not be modular if I do the same process again and again. And I'm going to move the active to from home to registration. Now if you notice, once I move to a registration, even though the content is same, the selection has moved to the registration, because I put this for the second page. I moved the active attribute value. I set the class attribute value set to active, and it has been highlighting in this way. So first thing, remember this design, this style sheet, I made this particular class selector as part of a child of this list item. So make sure you put this active to a child of a list item. Of course, the child of the list item in this case is the hyperlink. That's why I have put it here. Same case applicable for the other one, but being the tag itself, you did not get confused. But you can even add a uh, ID selector or class selector to a child of anything. And it is same like child elements can be added according to the respective tag uh, or class or ID selectors. Okay. So let me put others design in the same way about. Okay, even the content remains same. I've created five, including the existing one. So totally we have five HTML pages. We have a different selectors move active. Class selector value for a hyperlink set for every page a different one. So, so I can move the choice between them. So the selection getting retained. So at least the highlighted part, the active stage, something we made it done. So visited page. If you see that the visited page color is also slightly, I think I hope we have a visited page also color set to visited. This also can be customized, but I don't want to do it here. I need to do from all the five pages. But this is also a built-in event. You can give a different background color if you do not want the default behavior of a visited page. You can give a different color. Instead of different color, maybe the color of the text could be set to someone some different color. I just add this one only to the feedback. So let me see the feedback. See, it's set to white because all the pages already been visited. So that's the reason it's set to. So this can also be used. So I just leave it blank at this point, but if you require, you can use it for your further reference. So these are all the built-in events. Remember, this event we are not explicitly triggering as the cursor. That's the reason it has a different separator in this case. Usually we give a space for separating between the child and parent, but in this case it's a event denotation, so that's the reason it's been mentioned in this way. So we have five different pages. Now if you evaluate what is the plus and minus of this design, the major drawback looks like the left navigation bar, even though content is going to change, the left navigation bar is repeated throughout all the five different pages. Every time I need to put the same code again and again. Only difference is moving the active or maybe the class selector value for a hyperlink should be shifted to something or some other element, but otherwise this has to be repeated. Suddenly you decided to add one more link. The biggest problem is you need to put the same link across all the five pages again and again, otherwise your design may have some sort of broken link. So this itself a very negative point of our design at this point, and this is the reason we want to avoid the five different page loading as a five different links. If any way if I can do something, I can load this particular DOM alone instead of loading the entire page. I could retain the same single design instead of repeating them into five different pages. If we could find some other way to load this particular DOM alone, now my word has changed to word DOM. So this kind of event management or this kind of manipulation of the elements we do it through JavaScript. That's the reason I set the particular way of representing the data by manipulating a DOM, a document object model. In this case, what is the DOM we have? Let us see which DOM we have to represent the content. In this case, a div tag having a class attribute value set to content. This is the one is more than enough to be get changed. The rest could be the same. Logo is going to be the same. Maybe the search bar is going to be the same. Only this particular content looks like it's going to be changed. But our design at this point, what you have done, it's not extendable. But unfortunately, we have to proceed further. Then we'll come back. If you could, is there any way I can load everything into a single page instead of loading them into a different pages? If you have any other idea also you can share, but without using JavaScript I could not get any idea of loading them into a single page. So fine, let me empty the content for a registration page. So here I would like to put a form, maybe a heading and a form. We'll put a form with the various input fields having the text attribute value set to various things like a text, password, radio button, checkbox. We'll try them, and of course handle the events through a JavaScript that also we'll work on it. Okay, and one more thing, this style seems to be repeated across all the design, and probably time to make it as an external style sheet. Remember, the style sheet can be included in three different ways. One is inline styling, which we saw in the very first beginning example. Second, internal style sheet, that is what we have done now. So that particular style, even though it is separated, but it is internally located, but it is there with the inside the file, inside the HTML itself. We can also make it as an external style sheet. So let me put that because it is quite redundant. Anyway, our objective to make it as a single page design, but at least we will start from the CSS side. So for good management, I'll create a folder which is going to host my CSS files. Chances are that I may require different CSS for single different pages. So better make it as a separate folder. Make it the option of I hope already there. Other source cascade styles. Nothing but it is going to put a .css as an extension. So let's add everything here. So I brought everything to this external style sheet. I just need to link them. Okay, let us see without the style sheet how things looks like. Oh my god. So looks like the style sheet is the only one made sure the entire layouting as desired way. So time to link them. It's generic link, so you can link it using link element or tag. It has a href, specify the link. I would recommend control space, try to see whether the NetBeans discovers your file. Always try to give a relative path, don't give the absolute path like your file folder system entirely. This may have a concatenated issues while you run this thing in the server. Since it is generic link, I need to define the relation rel as a style sheet. Looks like it don't demand a close tag thanks to HTML5. Okay, let me see. Yeah, got it back. So let's put this one across all the pages instead of manually calling or every time repeating the same in every page. Now itself I see the issues. Any change I do in one single page I need to repeat across all the pages. That is itself a bad design. But remember, few years back this is the effective design. This is how IT or programming evolves. Few years back, I'm talking about maybe some 10 or 15 years back, this is the effective design. But now, outdated idea. We'll empty the other pages shortly, but at least now we'll add a registration page. Okay, let me put a heading over here. I haven't utilized this space, but I asked you to put a search bar over here, right? Okay, maybe I'll put the heading over here. So inside the content, I'm going to introduce a h1. H1 is a heading. H1 is the highest size of the heading. As you go slightly, H1, H2, H3, H4. will try to bring the size of the header slightly smaller. Of course, by tag selecting it, writing in CSS, you can change the default behavior. So, changing the text size of your desired values. Anyway, so I'm going to make it as a registration. Okay, okay. Sorry. That's the reason. See, we have a common design across, we end up confusing. Let me put across everywhere. Now, at least, I, in my understanding, content touching the borders is not a good design. So let me add some sort of. Anyway, thanks to external style sheet, all I need to modify this style sheet alone. So margin left, I put some 10 px. Okay, just slightly put a margin over here. So it will be across all. Remember, even the page loads quite faster, but of course you see that page is getting refreshed. You will see this thing into, I mean, if you have a slower internet connection, anyway, it's a local host environment. If you host this site into a live server, the load time you could somehow sense it with a slower connection. So the page has to refresh, the content has to reload, and everything it has to be done. Okay, now registration. We'll create a small form. Form is a semantic element, a meaningful name. But it is there from the very beginning. It is not something part of HTML5 add-on, but it's still a semantic element. It's a meaningful one. So within the form, a group of elements can be used, and that can be used as a single block to transmit the data to a server. So I'm going to just use the form element to group my elements inside, because those data either user influence, either user will touch and modify it, or the user may enter something and do some other thing with that, or the form has to be submitted when the user finally submit, or when he done with the entire data to people, whatever the concern he has to do. So let me put input element. Looks like this is also a semantic one. HTML5 does not demand the input element to be closed, but if you are using older HTML, you have to close it in this way. That is not to be a big complaint. An input element or input tag would minimum require a type attribute to be specified. Remember, these things are attributes. So attribute of a tag. A tag, depending on the type of, in this case input, depending on the type, the input element will have a different presentation. Assuming the input types are to text, you see that text input or text field has been showing over here. If it is checkbox, it will put a checkbox. So the type attribute makes it radio button. And password field, password type will make it a secured input field, like as I enter, user won't see it. So depending on the type attribute value, the input field changes the design. So at this point we are going to need text name attribute and ID attribute. We have other attributes for input field. A name of input field, you can say, for example, in this case, first name. So this one is going to host the first name value. ID also you can keep the same as long as it doesn't conflict with other input elements, but there is a fundamental difference between the ID and the name. ID, as we know, the ID can be specified across all the tags or all the elements to identify in the given document object model or the DOM. So as of now, you just assume in this way. If at all we need some sort of help on this through a JavaScript, we may use either ID or name, whatever we want. But at this example, I'm going to keep the ID and the name same. And another attribute, value, whatever the value it is going to take, by default it is blank because the user is going to enter it. But if you want to pre-fill something, so something you can enter. So this value pre-filled for you. So value, I'm going to keep it empty. I'm not going to define either. I'm going to keep, better I keep it empty so that there is an attribute exists for you. And you want to let the user which, for what purpose this input field is there. You can make it as a placeholder. Okay, enter first name. This will guide the user for which purpose this particular input field is being used. This will disappear as the user start typing. So these are all the new add-ons. Remember, it's been quite recently added on the HTML5 design document specification. Previously we were depending on JavaScript to do all those stuff. Now it is all built in. And this is still not looking good. Touching the border is not something what we want. So let me add some sort of style. Form, I'm going to give a default margin, maybe 10 pixel. So by default the form will be having some margin added. Okay, input field also I want to make it bigger. It's smaller, right? So let me, instead of say I'm going to give a class selector. Some meaningful name I'm trying to give. I'm going to give a width some 150 pixel. So I created a class selector specification. So let me add that to this because I may have more than one field. I preferred a text. It's larger. So not something I expected. Some 350. Fine. Okay. Text is still smaller. We'll give a text font size, sorry. Let me make slightly a larger font, a very bigger. So we made a customized text input at this point. But remember, when we have, okay, let me do that as well. So let me put one more input field. Password. There is a problem now. Both are touching. That is also doesn't look good. But assuming if I enter in this way, I won't be knowing which field for which purpose. So whether the Raja in this case for a first name or username, I don't know. So it is recommended to have a label. That's the reason we often keep a label even though the placeholder text exists. It is better to keep a label inside a form so that that label could be visible. There are for field, for attribute, you can tell it this label belongs to. So it helps for which purpose I am using. This for is not mandatory, but it guides you okay for which purpose for this labels holding an input text or input field for this particular one. It is nothing to do with ID or any identifier. Label we are not going to manipulate anyway, but it guides it. Remember, something is not really looking good, but somehow we are progressing. I'm going to make the text input slightly smaller. One thing, once I made the text input value smaller, you are noticing that it looks like it is having the float value, it is filling the empty space. So in this case, I want to keep a single line across repeated every way. So I can give some sort of idea. So to make sure these things doesn't fill the space, we have to do something else in this case. So to taking font text input. Okay. I made it as a block so that fully block the given, and subsequently this block has made sure the entire width has been utilized and there is no room for the other one to get appear. So the first one has occupied and second one naturally put into the second. If you really want to give some sort of margin, if you want, maybe I can give a margin top alone some 10 pixel. That's really good, really bad. I'll do one thing. I'll create a definition for label. In order to make it this, that's what I was saying, by default certain elements may not be a block element or box elements. We have to force it, then it will start accepting. So naturally input fields were not a block element, I had to tell it is a block, and then the label was not a block element, I had to tell the block, and then these things started taking all the attribute values. So make sure when you do not get expected behavior, first check, you have to do it whether the element is a block or not. Block or not, a block or box both are same. Okay, your div is by default a block element, and for example, what is that opposite of a block? Block will tend to occupy the entire row. The opposite one or the default behavior inline. That's the reason in the same line things are coming. So the block is a blocking one, so make sure it will make sure that the entire thing occupies the given row. Okay, now I hope I can increase the size to some password I can enter. Let me put some other I added a radio button as well. Username something went wrong for that. Doesn't have a class. Placeholder missing. Okay, so the gender. So this is the radio box, radio button. Nothing but the input field, the attribute type set to radio. As we know, the only selection should be made because the gender should be either male or female. So one selection at a time is allowed. This is possible by defining the same name for the given input text. Remember, the ID is different because I need to know ID. I cannot keep the same. I already told you it should be unique always. So in this case, the ID has to be different. But anyway, these things belong to the same group. So the name tells this thing, these two radio buttons belongs to the same group. Assuming if I have a different one, see, both will independently get selected as they are not part of the group. One does not know about the other selection. So if you are using the radio button, use the radio button only when one single choice is allowed, not the multiple choices. So that's the time the radio button is the ideal choice, but make sure it belongs to a group, male or female, or in this case. So if you have a multiple choice, maybe. So if you require a multiple choice, you can use a checkbox instead. Either one or multiple choice can be selected. So input attribute having the type attribute value set to checkbox in this case. Of course, could be a different name and ID because all are a different group, but they are independently either having a check and uncheck state. But radio button, it's a grouped one, so either one choice is allowed. Okay. So this is the one. And apart from what are all the type attributes it can take, there are plenty of type attribute nowadays available for part of what you call HTML5 standard. So let me see. If you see that email, number, month, even date, there are plenty of things available. A date placeholder is not allowed, but just wanted to show you how the date will come. You may do a little example on, see, these are all built in for your HTML. Try to run the same code in your IE, you won't get this feature. So that's the reason I was demanding use the HTML5 compatible browser. Most of the browser at this point you download all are HTML5 compatible. You can very well get these features. So just play around with the various attribute values set to type. And of course, for date the placeholder is not accepted because the choice has to be selected. So there is no way of using it. This kind of suggestion, of course, your NetBeans is showing. So there are, I think the number, phone number, so TEL, and we have various things, color picker, range, number mean that will be to put a counter so that the number value can be can be entered, and of course hidden fields. You want to keep some fields, but keep it hidden, and only when certain condition meet you want to show them. So a lot of things you can do. These are all part of HTML5, and new attribute values being specified can be specified for a type attribute. So just play around with them, see how these things looks like. Okay, one more form element. What else? The drop down we have, I hope. It is called select. A drop down, we quite by default we call them as a drop down. It is actually a select option, like a unordered list or ordered list. There will be a group element called in that case it was ul, in this case it is select, and individual options. Option also can take value internally, because this is what is going to be selected or sent. Maybe value could be number or anything the server sends, or could be anything what you display. So maybe okay, seems to be default setting of the Chrome. So in this case, I really don't want, I make it as a text input itself because one feature already there. Let's go back. Okay, group element. So option also have a value attribute, and this could be internal numbering or any other ID what you get from a server. You can keep it. So a drop down button is ready. So most of your design will be a combination of these fields. An input field with various text, type attribute value set, and of course a drop down, maybe additional one you'll be seeing quite often across all the form. When you're done with the form, time to submit it. Submit. Or save. Want to get confused. It's really bad. Let it be a default one. I don't want a quite longer button. I keep an empty label because that's the only when I've added a margin for it. Keep some empty label. Okay. So a save button. A form will get submitted because this is the one I have given as a submit, as a value for the type attribute. When the user click on this save button, the form will get automatically submitted to the given, I haven't given anything here, so given action and method, or the few things you need to put. If you notice, when I try to hit that particular button, it is trying to call this particular URL which I gave it under the form attribute value action. What I have set the URL, it tried to send all these data, whatever the user entered. User entered mean what are all the data being entered in the input field, or what are the values selected in the checkboxes, what are all the values selected in the radio button, and what are the values selected in the select option or drop down. Everything will be sent through a HTTP post to this URL. At this point, how it works is not our scope. Anyway, we will be seeing them how it is going to work. A form will minimum require these two attribute values to be specified as long as it is submitted on the values taken to the server or any other places. Minimum it is needed, but this can also be overridden by JavaScript. The JavaScript can be used to still submit the form, but the action is the target where the particular form value is going to enter, and method and which HTTP way you are trying to send the data. Usually form data we have a habit of submitting through the post, but if at all if you make it as a get, I submit it. If you see that URL is appended with the values whatever I entered in the form elements or in the input text field. If you notice them, the name of the form, name, value, whatever I specified in the name attribute, name, what I have entered, name of the form, and what are the values corresponding is being appended in the URL itself, and the value is being sent to the server in this way. If you notice that the affirmative actions, it's been set on, so we have to work on it to get what is the actual value to be sent. But one thing it's very clear, HTTP GET looks like appending the URL directly, and it is sending the data through the HTTP itself through the URL arguments. But the same case was not for HTTP post, which is something quite, you know, we are quite familiar with that, because that's the reason we call the HTTP post is quite secure, something like that, because it is not going to append the values but still send the data to the server. I mean, append the URL or anything else. It's not going to do append any URL parameters. So just same URL, but the data could be still submitted. So the way HTTP posts, it adds the particular payloads, the values in the header itself instead of appending the URL. But whereas HTTP GET, it sends the data through the URL itself. So that makes a security or something security violation in case. But both does the HTTP, the sending the data through the HTTP. Default value, we may assume it, okay, we'll keep the post as a default one because the form value should be secure always. How the form takes the value, how it retrieves, how it processes, that's beyond the scope of this particular session. Maybe as we progress, we will see how this thing going to work. We have Ajax, anyway, things are going to come. How this thing going to work, we will see them in detail. But anyway, as of now, a form element or form tag would minimum require action and method attribute value specified. Input field or input elements would surely require minimum type defined, and based on the type whether the placeholder or anything else is going to come. So we have a various type values, text, password, radio, checkboxes, which is quite often we use, and we still have more type values in according to HTML5 documentation. And we have a couple of other, and of course we have seen the select option, which is a drop down value, and we have also customized in some other way. I would recommend the label field, make sure you put for attribute, guide the why I am trying to do this mean, for example, the for, what way it is going to helpful, because when you run this code in a mobile phones usually touchscreen based phones right now, so it will automatically shift the focus to the next fields if you guide the elements in such a way. That's what I was telling, the need of semantic tags. It's not only for developers point of view, it will guide the particular target. If it is search engine, it can identify the content. If it is a phone can identify the focus according to how the tags placement being set. So that's the reason the semantic elements being introduced, and it will programmatically guide the next focus if it is a touchscreen phone or anything else. So make sure you put it. For a couple of labels I haven't put, but I would recommend you to put the for value set for. Would recommend you put for every input fields wherever you are using, make sure label, put the for attribute value, set the same, you guide it for which input field this label is assisting. So we have created a simple form. Anyway, few things we have to do going ahead. Creating a form is not a rocket science, and as you know, it's pretty simple as you create, but only thing we have, how far we can customize it. And we also saw the block element. There are some elements are not by default block, so that by default they are inlines, mean it is tend to occupy this the whatever the remaining space available. A block sometime may not occupy a remaining space. That time you can guide it by putting the float value and still incorporate the remaining space. So see that whether your CS is working according to your expectation. If not, try to very first condition whether try to see whether it is a block or not. By default it may be an inline content, so that time you may force it to be a block element or not. Okay. So now we have created the second page, which is going to host the registration page. Now we have a save and which is submitted. Now in actual practical purpose, this form has to be validated. Of course, the main purpose of JavaScript for a few years back we were considering for validation. Of course, we ended up in this situation at this point. We have to see whether the user is entering all those values, specific values, he does not keep the empty values. Then we have to allow the form to be submitted. Till that time we should not allow the form to be submitted. So we have to do a couple of setup in order to make the form does not get submitted until the desired input is entered or desired value is entered. So how we can going to do that? Of course, we need a JavaScript to do the job, because without JavaScript I cannot handle other events. So time to learn about the JavaScript, in fact. So we have to see what are all the way we can incorporate JavaScript. That's also the next part. And we are already aware of it. Each page, separate page, different page. So every time page is getting refreshed. That feature also we would like to avoid as we extend this design into a different one. And I'll also going ahead will be introducing more elements like a table, maybe text area, which is a slightly bigger text input. There are a couple of other, maybe that's the reason I kept the feedback also. We'll create a small one, let the user compose a longer text, let them do it. And of course, here we have a select input, like select option. This is a single selection. We can also have a multiple selection, that also we can make it. I hope let me see. If I make a multiple, I think holding control, for Mac it is command, can select multiple items. So if you specify multiple attribute, so it will become a multi-choice one. So you try that. So in this case we have simply created a simple form, but let's see if we can put the JavaScript in place. JavaScript can be embedded anywhere in your application. A JavaScript block, it is a place where you are going to manipulate the DOM or document object model. Remember here the document object models, in this case all the elements have been loaded when the page is fully displaying. For example, the page is displaying exactly clearly means your DOM is ready. So as soon as your all the DOM elements is loaded, and that's the right time to kick in your JavaScript block. So we have to see the timing as well when we introduce the JavaScript. That is very important, because JavaScript is considered for manipulating the DOM. So in such a case, such a DOM does not exist, the JavaScript part, there is no use. So how the DOM propagation happens? Of course, from top to bottom. In this case, assuming the content DOM will be loaded after the left navigation bar would be loaded. So there should be a hierarchy. So at this point, when it encounters the final div or main or whatever div, assuming the entire child of the main div is loaded. So it's something like a loading happening from top to bottom, it propagates till the end. So assuming this is a script block, whatever you write inside becomes a JavaScript. So you can write your JavaScript code straight away inside anywhere. In fact, this script block could be anywhere, but I've kept it in the head tag or under the head element. Previously, it was required in prior to HTML5. Now it is not required. A script tag is going to host your JavaScript code. So a JavaScript code will have a control across your entire document. But the point here is, if you are trying to manipulate the left navigation bar when the page loads, you may not be able to do that because the script block is loaded. After that only the left navigation bar will load. So the timing, the placement will make a sense, and we are going to encounter a lot of scenario. We are going to see how far this JavaScript block and why sometime it is working, sometime why it is not working, what would be the reason. We are going to analyze in the various section. But anyway, to start with, I am going to keep the script blocks on the top. But as I create a complex design, my script block will eventually go below to the. I'll try to keep it as a last. I'll because the reason is the DOM loading happens from the top to bottom. If your JavaScript code is much bigger, you have a longer number of lines of code written in JavaScript, so the loading time will get reduced because if you are loading on the top itself. So it will be better on that point of time keeping the JavaScript block at the end of your maybe at just before ending your body tag would be an ideal one. But as we haven't written even a single line of JavaScript, we don't need to worry. So JavaScript blocks, same like other object-oriented program, the JavaScript is having all the object-oriented property. The most common one, the function keyword. There is no return type declaration. So name, just a user defined name, not to get worry about like click handle, any built-in method is there. A pretty simple syntax of a JavaScript, having the function declaration and the name of the function, and of course arguments whatever it is going to take, and open and close parentheses. If it is returning something, you can keep the return statement. If not, leave it. You don't need to explicitly say either that is a return type like a void or string or anything else. It will automatically identify the object type, whether it is returning something, but is not returning, it is going to execute. So it's pretty simple to write a simple JavaScript function. So the function can be called from the HTML elements or from the DOM when some action is performed. For example, forget about the form for some time. There's one more element called button. There is a fundamental difference between the input type set to something like submit or something, otherwise just a generic button. Both will look like same. For example, let me put a simple button. So it's also the same like a button, but this is a very generic button. So whenever the button gets clicked, I can call on click attribute and call fire or probably I can invoke a JavaScript function from there. So whenever this particular button gets clicked, it will automatically execute your JavaScript function. Okay, easiest one, alert, built-in method or built-in method available in JavaScript. You can put any word. So whenever user click on it, you are getting an alert. Remember, it's not for testing purpose, but at least it works. So whenever a button invokes an event called onClick, it will call a function what we have defined in the script block, and it will start executing. But this may not be an ideal way to debug your application. Debugging should be done using console or let me put a button click. If you have a suspicion whether this particular block is called or not, you can write a console statement, console.log. You can identify whether the particular block is called or not. The console output can be seen by right clicking, going to inspect elements. The last tab is called console. That's what I was saying. You will end up spending a lot of time with this area when you have your JavaScript part increased. So now when I click on this particular button, if you see that console output is being printed over here. Number of time, of course 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let me clear it. So we can verify the block is called or not instead of putting an alert. Alert could be for some other purpose. I just put it trying to show you how this block is working. So an input element in this case, HTML element like a button can very well call a JavaScript block through which various attributes specified, mostly on click. Let me see what on blur, on change. For example, in this case, select, it is on change. So whenever the choice change, it will call the JavaScript function. So we can somehow make a relation to HTML to JavaScript through which while we detect some events and we can transfer that particular task to JavaScript. So JavaScript is from there can take control and start manipulating your. Whenever the button gets clicked, we were getting a console output in the debug area, in the last tag. So as I click the button, I could see the console output is printing because we have the button click. We are calling or we have defined the attribute on click with the value of a JavaScript function. So all you need to call the JavaScript function from here and button gets clicked. And we are seeing that particular output is printed. Now let's start with the DOM manipulation. This may be, I already gave an ID for H1. I hope somewhere I had a heading, yeah, here. So some sort of ID I have given. Document is an object of the entire document. So this object is available globally. Get element by ID. So the element h1 having an ID, rechdiv. I'm going to change its HTML, inner HTML to some value. For example, document global object, instance of a document, your entire page, whatever document object model exists, in that it is going to search for an ID called rechdiv. Assuming it has found the ID and it has the instance of that particular DOM, and its inner HTML is going to get a new value called button click, something like that. Or maybe, okay, HTML, because h1 is itself is having its own design, so I'm going to set the HTML value inside whatever the content. So this one is going to get changed when I click the button. So let me go to registration page. When I click, you notice that the text got changed. So it can manipulate the DOM in various ways. Document get element by ID or get element by name. It can search through it and get the instance of that particular document object model and various values like inner HTML, or for example in this case let me get access to a first name. We try first name. Okay, it works. Okay, so ID works, it should work, name also. Okay, as of now keep it ID. So I can manipulate the DOM. I can set the value through JavaScript, get and set the value. I can in fact get and set it, modify it, append it, or you can even hide it or add new DOM element. I can do a lot of things using JavaScript, but the JavaScript takes control in certain way. For example, only when the page starts loaded or only when the placement is executed. For example, in this case, JavaScript block would become active. Any global object, whatever you specify, will get a value the moment it start executing the script block. But the function calling was slightly asynchronous because this method is not, or the function is not executed immediately. The function was executed only when a so-called button gets clicked. So we don't need to worry about the placement of the script at this point. But sometime you would end up loading the script block or you would end up executing the script block as soon as the page is ready, as soon as the page is loaded. So that time the placement makes a sense. You have to decide what time it has to be manipulated. So let me see. Globally, immediately when the script block loaded, I'm setting the document, I'm searching for a ID called regdiv and setting the value to page loaded. And of course the previous one still exists. So let me do something here. I don't see any change, but as per the condition, the script block is first executed. It should have modified this h1 block. It did not. So we'll have to identify what really went wrong. So the console will try to guide you. And is there any other way we can find out or anything going wrong? In this case, uncaught type error cannot set property inner HTML of null. If you notice, if you click on it, it will highlight the line of the code what is going wrong. Sorry, let me do it again. So click it. It is highlighting which part is going wrong. So here itself our debugging started. Something going wrong. It is saying you are trying to access some sort of null value. Obvious reason, the placement. Remember, when this document tried to search for an ID called regdiv, it could not find because the script block executed, but after executing the script block only these DOMs getting loaded. These DOMs may not be ready while the script block was executed. So in that case, the script block placement is wrong. Better we keep somewhere or just before the body, because everything within the body only. So if I keep it here, I see that the change reflects immediately as the page loaded, and of course I can click on it, the text also manipulated. So the placement of the script block is also very important, and the way you get in touch with the DOM, you have to make sure the DOM is ready or the document object model is ready, so the script block can take effect on it. But this is only when you need to worry when you are doing some manipulation as the page loaded immediately, or if you are only manipulating the DOM only through certain functions only when certain events triggered, you don't need to worry about the script block could be anyway. But on page load or on document load or on window load, if you are doing some sort of changes, you have to make sure the script block plays at the end so that the entire DOM would have been loaded. The script block can easily take effect. And of course, the placement makes sense. I have already told you. So you are the better judge to decide like where to keep them or how to have them. Manipulated in other ways. For example, the value, the DOM dot value will take effect only when an input field or anything specific to form attribute the value you can keep it. For any other DOM, inner HTML. So the value could be manipulated in this way. It is a get and set. You can retrieve the value and you can also set the value. So if you left right, if you modify, the get set will automatically take effect. So at this point we have introduced the JavaScript. And we also saw certain form attributes, especially input type value with the various values. And of course, we have also seen the select option with the single and multiple choices. So I'll leave this point, leave this exercise with this. So make sure you complete this form, and in trying to keep that JavaScript block anywhere else your desired positions. Try to see like what kind of error. Try to utilize this console block, see whether the particular line being executed or not. So the console block would be quite helpful as you start doing more coding on the JavaScript side. And of course, I have to manage the form. The next task would be blocking the form submit as long as my form validation goes successful. Once the form validation goes successful, we have to allow the form to be submitted. Till that time, I should not allow this particular thing to happen. So next part, preventing the default is going to be the next task, and of course the JavaScript going to do. And on the way, I will also be introducing jQuery. uh, Instead of writing the raw JavaScript, we'll also writing a neatly written JavaScript, which is something widely used. A lot of helper functions are there, so we'll also use the jQuery. We'll try to minimize the use of direct or the raw jQuery statements like this. If you see that I had a little difficulty to identify the document element by ID or name, because browser dependent. Some of the browser will accept that particular, some of the browser may not accept it. So the jQuery helps you to overcome the issues between the browser compatibility. It adds all sort of support and gives us a single method, so then you can directly use without worrying about the browser version. So that I am going to tell you. Maybe one was the question. In fact, I feel others also would need the clarity. The box model I was talking about, saw a nice example on the W3 or W3 school, which is most of the people would be referring. The CSS box model, if you see that, the difference between margin and padding very clearly been there given. So you can refer this one. So any box what we were creating or any block what we were creating, remember it had a border. By default the border set to 0, it's invisible, assuming that's the uh, border or the dead end of that your blocks. And any margin you specify, the value will be calculated outside of your border, and any padding you specify will be calculated after the border or inside the border. So if you want, you can take this as a reference for your box based design. So any references or any kind of calculation going wrong, you may just visualize yourself like how this thing would have been left. Or in fact, even Chrome also will help you. If you go to elements, if you try to focus certain tag, see if you look at that, I'm focusing the header, and automatically the head tag has been highlighted over here, left navigation bar. You can notice that what is the width, effective width. See, if you notice that effective width is 160 pixel. In that there is a margin of padding exists. So if you see the small difference, you could very clearly notice. So by highlighting, moving the cursor between them, you can identify what exact effective width it has taken. So make use of this debugging tool to analyze how things being laid off. If anything goes wrong, utilize these tool and fix the issue. Okay, so this is the time to use this particular console, what you call developer tool, what your Chrome gives. So can be accessed view. There is a developer JavaScript console, you can use it, or maybe through this way also you can access, I hope. No, it's not there. So for Mac it is there under view, or right clicking inspect element will bring this window. So if you depending on your usage, keep it wherever you want, left or right. Make sure you debug it when your task or when any design going wrong. Of course, this could be used to identify whether the JavaScript block is executing or not. And we also saw the need of placement. So where to start, where to keep the script block. Remember, script block can also be repetitive. It can be anywhere. Multiple script block could be there. It's up to you. But for a clarity, I would recommend keep the script block at the end. Only keep the script block only when something has to be executed. When your script is, for example, JavaScript number of lines of codes are very less, you may keep it on the top. because the script block may have number of lines, mean it will eventually reduce the time of, I mean, increase the time of your page load if it is number of lines are there. So it is better to keep it at the end, but make sure what would be the better placement for your design. Analyze and decide. So that's a point I'm trying to stress. Next, we have to see form submission. We have to see, like, how I can prevent the form submission when uh, uh, input fields are blank, or any fields which is not something different type. For example, if I'm setting quantity, the user has to enter the number. Instead, user might have entered a text. So we have to validate, and until we get the clear validation go through, yes, we should not allow the form to be submitted. So that event propagation I'm trying to modify using the JavaScript, and of course from here the JavaScript part would be more as we progress. I'll upload this code. Hopefully you can complete it. Make sure you create 4 or 5 pages like this, because I want the page to be created. The next example or subsequent example, we have to reduce the page refresh. So we'll bring every page into one single page and load everything inside. So make sure you create 5 pages like what I did, and create a form, play around with that, and use the JavaScript C, and try to change the placement of script block and see various whatever the errors are coming, and analyze them. Okay.